So I'm standing here, obviously in the middle of a bike lane, so this will be a quick video. Here's my Buy Me a Coffee and WeChat QR codes if you want to give the channel a little boost.
Hello, man.
Next, a real quick shout out to the Daniel Dumbrell channel, who I've only seen for some reason on other people's channels. I don't know why, but recently I've only seen him on other people's channels. YouTube hasn't been great for notifications these days though, so it is what it is. Daniel Dumbrell speaks very well and knows what he's talking about, usually. No doubt he'd be able to cover this topic that I'm about to talk about today much better than I can. Link in the description. Check out his channel if you get the time. So let's get this ball rolling. No stems, no seeds that you don't need. Can anybody finish that song? Anybody that's out there? Acapulco Gold is badass weed. Acapulco Gold, Panama Red, Colombian Gold, Wacky Weed, Puerto Rican, Jamaican Sensimilia, Ganja, Maui Wowie, Thai Stick, Hindu Kush, Afghani, Lebanese Gold, that really smelly stuff, the skunk weed, Northern Lights, and Chronic. I think Snoop Dogg says that. Anyway, leave a comment down below if you've heard these names or tested them for research purposes. Most of those products included the country of origin in the name, didn't they? As a Canadian, I don't really remember my government brutally going after those countries for the existence of those products in Canada. All of those products would have entered Canada where? How did they get into Canada? Through the USA. Did Canada blame the US? Not that I remember. Back then, weed was blamed for being like a gateway drug. But who's really opening the gateway today? Who's opening the gateway? All levels of the US government are on a constant warpath these days against mainly China and Mexico in relation to the US fentanyl crisis. Am I right? Tell me in the comments down below, how often do you hear even the slightest bit of self-reflection from the US on this matter, and not just the government, in social media as well, US social media. You don't hear it. Let's dig into how the whole fentanyl mess got started. The opioid epidemic kicked off with overprescribing pharma painkillers like OxyContin in the 90s and 2000s. Purdue Pharma, who's the main culprit, they pushed it as a non-addictive. Doctors handed it out like it was candy. And they also got kickbacks, and Big Pharma lobbied the US government hard. That flooded communities with what? Addiction. Then people turned to cheaper heroin when their prescriptions ran out, which cartels laced with fentanyl starting around 2013. Some people say the US doesn't do infrastructure, but between Big Pharma and the US government, they sure built an on-ramp to this addiction highway, didn't they? In the 70s, we were terrified of marijuana. Acapulco Gold, Maui Wowie, Thai Stick. One puff, just one puff, they said, and you're on heroin by Friday. So why are we still losing this war on a drug 1,000 times deadlier? Back then, pot was supposed to be the gateway drug, right? Smuggled from Mexico, Colombia, Jamaica, all through the US, into Canada at least anyway. Canada, where I'm from, got it secondhand, but the government still freaked out, but not against the US. Arrests skyrocketed. Politicians screamed, and every kid in the West knew the saying, just say no. And remember that. This is your brain on drugs commercial with the egg, right? You remember that?
This is your brain. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
But here's the thing. We won that war. Canada legalized it. And now Canada grows it better and even exports it. No gateway apocalypse, no zombie stoners, just taxes, jobs, and way better bud. Fast forward to 2025. Over 80,000 Americans died from fentanyl last year. That's one person every 6 minutes. That's unacceptable. Where is it from? Precursors from China and increasingly India. cooked in Mexico, smuggled through legal ports, mostly by, wait for it, American citizens. But who started the fire? Not cartels, not China. The US did, or we Westerners did. In the 90s, Big Pharma said OxyContin was non-addictive, like I said before. Doctors wrote millions of scripts. Addicts got cut off, turned to heroin. Cartels said, let's add fentanyl. Same pipeline, same demand, but now one bad pill equals death. Here's the hypocrisy. The US blames everyone. China, Mexico, Canada, even the border. The US builds walls that don't stop pills in glove compartments of US citizens crossing the border from Mexico, which is the lion's share of the smuggling. Maybe not in glove boxes, but it's in the legal Americans' cars crossing the border. Getting back to my main point, there's still no accountability, absolutely none, in the US. Just rhetoric that serves to feed hatred, mainly of China and Mexico. Here's an interesting thought. What if, starting tomorrow, there was no fentanyl? Okay, then what happens? Canada grew its own weed when imports got risky. Would America brew its own super opioids? Stronger, deadlier, homegrown? Especially considering that the US government takes absolutely no responsibility for what's going on. Or could the US start treating addiction like a health crisis instead of a war? Just like these e-bikes that keep passing by, supply never stops as long as there's demand. Is the US using the fentanyl crisis as a crutch to distract their citizens and fearmonger about China and Mexico? Think about it. You know, thereby when they're doing that, they're avoiding realistically addressing the problem, aren't they? Should they be taking more responsibility for this ugly, ugly monster that they created? Maybe start some kind of a government committee to, at the very least, make sure that it doesn't happen again. They're not even doing that. Let me know in the comments down below who's really responsible for this. Big Pharma, politicians, us in the West, China, Mexico? You really think so? Like, subscribe, and drop your take below. Let's start a more honest conversation on this topic. Boom. Boom. Peace.